You have to back it out and shorten it out and put it back in and make it. Well, people don't notice that unless you point it out to them, but it's the accumulation of those details, everything, the sconces, whatever it was, even the discontinuous beam support things, I don't know what you call them, but anyway, these beams were not continuous, or discontinuous. They lined up perfectly with a laser, and there was, nobody would ever see that except that we got a lift out to the property. So you could look down, and then they'd shot a laser right down, and man, it was. But that was the sort of thing that when you walked in, and this is getting way ahead of the story, but when you walked in, he deliberately designed it so that the narthex, which is the the first part of a ecclesiastical building, put it that way, because it's not a religious building. It's not dedicated to religion per se. But and then there's a very low kind of entrance, and it's deliberate because when you walk through it, then the whole thing reveals itself, and it's pretty dramatic and inspirational. So anyways, so we had decided that what we wanted was a facility that had the chapel as well as a space for not meetings, but gatherings post service, which is not uncommon. And so the initial layout that he came up with had the chapel and this low building next to it. We quickly abandoned that because it took up too much of the site and it really wasn't relevant. I mean, it was a very pretty, or not pretty is a weak word, but anyway, it was architecturally complementary to the chapel itself, but it shouldn't be. But one thing that nobody, I don't think, knows, maybe not even Bruce, when we reached an agreement, and it took us a while, it was a romance, and it took place back and forth. We'd go to Arkansas. And I think he wanted to do it. Buck had told him that, if you really want to cement your reputation, you need to do something out on the West Coast.
Where the people are.
Yeah, and so I think he understood that. I think Maurice maybe understood it as well as any. And so we, when they came out with their preliminary design, you may remember Maurice was really good at making models, popsicle sticks and tongue depressors, and he'd make these models, and they were persuasive. Anyway, they had this model of the chapel part. It was like just a section. And so we had a group of people. What I tried to do is to get everybody in our business that would have provided any service to anybody within that space to be a part of a little committee to comment about functionality and all the rest, because this was a working building. It had to work. And, we do roughly, I don't know what the numbers are today because I haven't been the CEO for a while, but we do about 11,000 burials every year, and about 5,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah, 5,000, closer to 6,000 funerals now. Yeah, I mean, I used to have a home at Sandpoint, and somebody said, "Well, tell me about this business." And I said, "Well, how many people live here full time?" About 5,000. I said, "Well, we do that many funerals every year." Really? So, just a little context for them. So they come out and they've got this thing, this model, and they can case and put it down. We had all these people around. I mean, we had somebody from the janitorial staff. We had somebody from the flower staff, all these people that had to work with this building. So they all had little comments, whatever they had. And so I dismissed everybody, including Bruce. And it was the three of us, Maurice and myself and Fay. And they looked at me and they said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I got to tell you, it's not what I had in mind." All of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my God." I said, it's, and I couldn't think of a better word. I said, "It's too squat." And it was, the original design. The peak of it wasn't going to work for me, at least. And so, anyway, we started on the road, and they were the easiest people to work for. Faye didn't much care for flying, but he did come out a few times. But Maurice was really the point guy. and then after we all agreed on the design and this and that and the flow and the function and keep in mind too, a couple things. This building sat on top of the best foundation in the world, which is a poured-in-place concrete mausoleum. The building is basically a burial ground underneath the chapel. And you don't get a sense of that from any place around until you go in and then you get down the stairs to access this space. In fact, my late wife is interred there. But so that was a great beginning in earthquake country. You can't build a foundation. You wouldn't normally build a foundation, anything like that. But it was part of the whole deal. So we accommodated that. The other challenge we had was that Fay did wood buildings, and this was designed as a full-on wood building, and it met every code requirement, right? But the County of Los Angeles would have nothing to do with it. They said, no, you have to, and this is after we're kind of moving along pretty well. They said, no, you have to put a steel frame in there. Oh, crap. So that is probably the only Fay Jones chapel that actually has a steel frame that nobody knows is there because he figured out how to.
You can't see it.
No, you can't see any of it.
It's eerie.
But they had to work around it, and this is, like I say, we're kind of well along here. And the county said, no, we won't permit it. So there were a number of challenges, but they all worked out to the benefit. There were a number of other things that cities and counties don't give a damn about design. They care about is what they claim they care about is public safety. Whether that's true or not, it's hard to say. But in any event, we had this space, and we called it on the plans the altar. And functionally in this building, it was at that end of the chapel, and it was built up. It had 3 levels, as I recall, something like that. And they said, well, if this is going to be a ceremonial area, the people have to have access to it. Where's the handicap? And they had visions of this, rail and stuff running up and interfering with the view. It's like, so then we took our magic eraser and took the word altar off there and said flower arranging area. Oh, suddenly the requirement went away. Well, it was an altar, but regardless of all that, but he cited it such that it's got the most you'll see this, most magnificent view of Los Angeles. And
Unbelievable.
I think the air is going to be pretty clear today. It can be a little mushy over there, but but his joy of doing this and other key to this building was to find somebody that could build it. Mm. Yeah. So we talked to a number of different builders, including the guy that was building the organization that was building the big Getty Museum. And it didn't take but about 2 minutes of talking to him to know that he was way out of our league in terms of just, the kinds of things he worked on and the multi-hundreds of millions of dollar projects, which the Getty certainly was, and on and on and on. So, Finally, we found this guy, or he found us. His name was Victor Pozo, and Victor was quite familiar with Fay's work. But the thing that kind of sold us on him was that he recognized the challenge of building the 2 arcs that exist in the building. So what he did was he was working on another job that happened to have this big flat concrete slab that they were about to start putting stuff on. And he used it to chalk this thing in full scale. Mm-hmm. To show how he could do it and what, and I said, that's our guy. Because he was kind of a one-man shop. I mean, he'd done a number of different things. They were good things, including a lovely chapel in the mid-Wilshire area of Los Angeles. But he just had this passion. He wanted to do this job. And So that was an excellent part of the team as well, very important to our success and of getting it done. And then we did occasionally have some input. I don't know that it was material, but Eric Lloyd Wright would come out. He was there when we did a little groundbreaking ceremony on this piece of ground that had yet to be developed for this purpose. Anyway, I don't know what else to say about all this other than, again, give credit to Buck for introducing us and for, Bruce seeing this article. I'd seen it, hadn't read it. Bruce had actually read it about Fay and what his concepts were. Anyway, it's worked very, very well. The only part that I've ever been disappointed in is that there've only been 2 weddings there. And the second one, not the first one, the second one was my daughter. But one of the things we did in order to make this be able to function in the way that we wanted to, and this had to do with the topography and the land and form and so on and so forth, was that we created a space that runs basically north of the chapel. The chapel doesn't quite sit on a perfect compass axis, but you look out from the chapel and you see this area, and we had it made absolutely level, and we had it plumbed for water and electricity and natural gas, so that you could tent it, and then we had actually stanchions built in, so you could put the tent. It was only ever done twice. Once was when we dedicated the building in 1997, and the second time was for my daughter's wedding. I think I'm still paying for that one, but it was a great place for weddings because you could, you stand up. All of Los Angeles is at your feet, and there you are doing your thing. And the only thing we had to add, which they never saw, and you couldn't see it anyway, we had to add a drape. So we put it up where you couldn't see it. It was a big, long thing. So that it would cut down the glare. I mean, the sun comes in that chapel, and it's like, whoa. But it's gotten great use over the years, but now it's all funerals. And that's why we don't do wedding. Well, a wedding takes like a day and a half. You got to do this and do that. And blah, blah, blah. In that period of time, you can probably do 4 or 5 funerals. Well, economics drives the world. And I've often told people I only believe in 2 things, economics and gravity. I'm not certain about gravity. But anyway, that's what it has become, but it functions very well. And people literally fight to get on the schedule because it's always booked. I think they set aside some time for you all today.
They did.
And which is great. And they should, because we're very proud of it. The surprising thing is, as important architecturally as that chapel is, very few people know about it. And I think probably for a couple of reasons. One, it's out east. People in Los Angeles kind of divide the world between east and west. And, west is where the money is. That's where the Rodeo Drive and movie people and whatever else, they all hang out and talk to one another about how many millions they have, or billions these days. And anything that's east of about, I don't know, La Brea, maybe. Or maybe downtown, now that we have the Disney Hall and all the rest, doesn't exist. Then the other is it's in a cemetery. People, the association with a cemetery, or they have fancier words these days, but it's fundamentally a cemetery. That, I think, is a little off-putting to people. They have these visions of cemeteries, even though Forest Lawn has tried to disabuse them of the old traditional cemetery by a lot of advertising and stuff. But anyway, so there we are. We also have one of the area's great pipe organs. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Fay had never put a pipe organ in a building. And at first he was a little concerned about it, but then he met this guy, Michael Quimby, who is a very wonderful organ builder, but he does one project at a time. And we got one of the great pipe organs in Los Angeles, again, that very few people have ever heard, unless they happen to have been in a funeral. And if you're at a funeral, they play about 2 or 3 songs. that everybody's heard. Once in a while somebody gets created, but it's rare. And so it just, it's a wonderful place, magic place. And I haven't been there for a little while, probably since my wife passed away, but I have a place right next to her.
Dennis, talk a little bit, if you would, about the initial contact with Fay. When Fay came, and Fay was up in years, and as it turned out, this was his last project, and his biggest chapel by a bunch, and that he had some reluctance to undertake something, and that in conversations I had with Fay and Maurice, he was concerned about the distance and the involvement. He wanted to be involved in the project. He had some other little projects that he was looking at, but he was captivated by that, but he was still reluctant. And that the solution to that we all came up with was that you personally had to go to Fayetteville and look at his project and see Thorncrown, see Cooper, and then meet his wife Gus, who was a key part of the firm, and that and to basically convince him that this merited his time.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a personal connection that he wanted that, and we were delighted to do it. I mean, that to me is a preferable way to do business anyway. I think architecture is a very personal thing, and even though my house has nothing to do with great architecture, it is a space that works very well for me and my late wife and so on, and so I understand, but would prefer again to have this interaction. And the funny thing was, at that time he did not have a fax machine. He bought one for this project, and I think somebody else had to get down to Kinko's or whatever was available, wherever you shopped in Fayetteville at the time, to get a fax machine, but because he knew he was going to have to.
I think they got the copies either at Kinko's or the jewelry shop or something, or some other business.
That's where they got the copies. Yeah,
they got the copies.
Yeah, they just needed to be able to transmit some things,
and
so they got a fax machine, and that was revolutionary in that office. I think that was like hallowed ground, the fax machine, and. But we had a wonderful time together. We spent a couple of days, as I remember.
We did.
And we had dinner. I can't remember if we had a meal at their house or.
We went to their house. We didn't have a meal there.
Okay.
But we did go to their house.
Okay. But
Gus was most hospitable. She was excited about the fact that we could have a project, a phase in a heavily populated area.
Exactly.
He had already done the project in Washington, D.C. that you mentioned earlier. And so he knew the significance of having it in a populated area, and L.A. is arguably one of the concentrations of architectural statements. And of course, Fay was such a big fan, as he was a student, of Frank Lloyd Wright's. And a lot of Frank's buildings were in the L.A. area.
Oh yeah, and still are. Barnsdall Park has Hollyhock House, and there's a number of others, as you know. I was told, I think Fay told me, that he was with Mr. Wright, as everybody called him, 24 hours before he died, I think. And but he was also one of the few students that ever crawled out from under Wright's dominating presence that went on to significant architectural accomplishment. Anyway, so yeah, we did spend that a couple of days, but I remember, and he always had a twinkle in his eye. He said, all right, Dennis, I'm sold. He said, I think you're okay. And, of course, I know Buck, he's great. And, I think Bruce is good. But he said, you have to wait. I said, well, okay. And he said, you have to wait a year. I said, okay. And I think he thought that was going to be a deal breaker. Well, I was sold on this guy. And so.
I remember that.
But he said, you have to wait a year. I said, okay, that's great. We're in. And so he was kind of had at that point, because he'd committed himself. And but yeah, it was a great time. And that romance, which is what I called it, worked out. But Maurice was, I think, really key to that whole decision as well. He could see the potential. And I said earlier that a lot of people in LA don't know about the chapel. That doesn't mean to say that a lot of people haven't seen it. We have counters, and always have had on our gates that count cars going in and out. We'll get anywhere between 4.5 to 6 million people getting on the year on our grounds. Now, that counts all the grounds, but most of 80% of that comes in through the main gate. So they go up there, they see this, they attend a service. So there's been millions, literally millions of people who have seen it, been in it, and love it. And if I happen to talk to somebody, and I live in Long Beach now, which is a long hike. From then I lived up, our association is with Whittier. It's technically not in the city, it doesn't really matter, but that's what we're associated with. People can relate to that name. If nothing else, they remember Richard Nixon. So millions have seen it. And if I'm at an event in Long Beach, where I've lived now for the past 20 plus years, 25 years, people say, oh, yeah, that chapel, tell me about, And then I get a chance to tell them about it. Most people have not heard Fay Jones' name. If you mention it, and if they're at all architecturally savvy, all of a sudden they light up and say, really? I mean, I talked to somebody that was pretty knowledgeable about architecture, and I said, we've got a Fay Jones building. Oh, no, there's nothing out here. I said, oh, yeah, there is. Yeah, it's biggest and best. Although somebody asked me which of his chapels I really preferred, and I like the one that, I think it's the Cooper that has the circles that.
Yes.
Yeah, in the curves.
Yeah, because I'm a big fan of circles and octagons, but anyway, I love I love Skyros. That's another thing, is the name. Originally, there was going to be, just outside our administration buildings, you'll see all this when you come in the front gate, there's a plot which we now use for burial purposes, but which had been reserved for a long time, what they were going to call the Rose Chapel. Well, that never got built. We did, however, build, there's a very small, very tiny little chapel that's in the old part of the park. It's kind of, there's two parts to this thing, more or less. And they're separated, the two gates are separated by about a mile. And they sort of wrap around this development, land development in between. So the big part was all created, by the way, Buck knows this, it's created by hydraulic mining techniques. These hills, there's some pictures they'll show you probably of what it used to look like. It was big and ugly. And they moved 26 million cubic yards of dirt in order to create what you see today, this gentle between two big, ugly peaks. And that's how they did it. And that was another challenge, was finding a property where it wasn't fill. So the one we used happened to be cut. And then we had this foundation I was talking about. But pardon me. I forgot where I was going with this. Anyway, whatever we were talking about there. I'm rambling on about the romance of Fay.
I think all of that plays a role, and in order to bring somebody like that in. And to give credit to Bruce Lazenby, who will be taking us on the tour today.
Yeah.
And
he'll tell you the truth.
The monument to Bruce that is just outside the entrance.
Yep.
Which I thought was fascinating, that they did that big marble stone recognition with the bronze plaque to Bruce and his role that he played. But he was the one that was reading the Smithsonian Magazine and worked for Dennis. And when they decided that they wanted to put this together, and as I alluded to earlier, the particular date that was the first time that Fay had seen the property, we were here and we were meeting Eric Lloyd Wright about some projects that Fay wanted to see, and Fay's inspiration for Thorn Crown was the Palos Verdes Wayfarers Chapel. And the people that paid for Thorn Crown put the money up. They were school teachers, and they had spent time at Wayfarers Chapel. And Eric's father, it wasn't
Yeah,
Frank Lloyd Wright.
it was Lloyd Wright, yeah.
It was Lloyd Wright that actually did Wayfarers. And so, and Fay and Eric Lloyd Wright were students under Frank, and one of the projects they worked on was Price Tower in Bartlesville. And they were both draftsmen on that project and became great friends. And so when I had called Fay about looking for some stuff here, he introduced me to Eric, and we did the project that's on the wall here, and that's where we then connected up, because the property owner next door to the project that we were working on was Rose Hills.
Right.
And so it connected all those things. But we were up there making this tour to see these things. Maurice had never seen Wayfarers Chapel, so that was a new experience for him.
And do you know where that chapel is today?
Yes, I know it's in a bar.
It's in a warehouse.
Yeah, that's
That shows.
the subsidence has taken it down the
Oh,
hill.
that's a huge problem in that part.
Yeah.
That land has been moving for thousands of years, and finally, I think people didn't think that it would affect them.
Yeah.
And it did, and sad, but I hope that it gets put back together.
But that was the time that Fay was here the first time and met Dennis and he had already met, was in the process, Lazenby is the first one to make contact with Fay.
Yeah.
But Fay was very enamored, but you're absolutely right. It was Maurice that was excited about the thing,
Yeah.
about being able to put down a stake of this size. And when you get to, we've all seen models, and Fay had done relatively. This was a cathedral. This is a whole different dimension for the size of a building, for a chapel, and scaling up. And we all wondered what it would look like when you take a Fay Jones masterpiece like Thorn Crown, which was recognized as the most significant building in that decade in the country. Is it, when you scale that up, what's it going to look like? And I think it's just much enhanced, and tribute to Dennis and their team for being solidly behind the thing all the way. I mean, it was amazing.
One of our biggest challenges was finding a roofer. And Vic Pozo would tell me that they'd be sitting in their shack construction trailer on the property, and they'd see these guys drive up, turn around, drive back down, never come in the trailer. Because the pitch on that is stunning. And it's just like this. And so they finally figured out how to do it, and they found a group that would do it. They had never had any injuries of any kind. They got it done. But it was a challenge for sure. And then last year before, I don't know, within the last 2, 3, 4 years, they had to re-roof the damn thing, because it's not like he was like Frank Lloyd Wright, who could never design a roof that didn't leak. But that was not the problem. It was just the constant weathering. So they redid the roof, and they again found somebody that could do it.
Well, if I can jump in, because
Please,
as we've begun our whole conversation with the thought that every work of architecture tells a story.
Right.
Has a story, emerges out of a story, tells a story. And for us, if I speak on behalf of our school, named in honor of Fay Jones, then the question is for me always, what does architecture tell for our students? And what does the example of Fay Jones tell for our students going forward? And there's, over time, as I've come to know and appreciate the work from the first house, which is now part of the school, as we've talked about, to the more recent projects, let's say, the last projects, both residential and ecclesiastical, sacred. There's some common threads always, and that, of course, is characteristic of any great, very good architecture practice, architect's work. But one of the things which is harder to get at, but still important to identify, which comes through in your description, is how much a Fay Jones project is a combination labor of love. That it takes, in the case of, let's call you the client, and I know you're representing a whole group of people, but it's a labor of love. At some point, even if the world is dominated by economics and gravity, you're not doing this type of project out of sheer economic pressure or gravitational force.
Well, economic reward can be psychic, it's not.
But there's that, and then there's, of course, the investment truly from the architectural practice, from Fay Jones and Maurice Jennings, those who work with them. They're doing this because of their love of architecture.
Absolutely.
And then, as importantly, and especially I think in the case of a practice and work that Fay Jones and Maurice Jennings would design, there's the love that the contractor and the artisans bring to this too, which is utterly essential to the experience of any Fay Jones designed work.
Well, I can tell you that team was devoted. The guy that I learned this term from him, I'm not sure everybody agrees with his terminology, but who put the concrete down and was in charge of that part of it. And he was kind of a little bit of a general manager and he working for Beck. He was talking about placement. He said, pour the concrete, we place it. Yeah, but this guy, hard-bitten old guy, had been out, in the field and the tan and the scars to prove it. He just loved this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, I think all of them did, particularly even when they grumbled about lining up the screw heads and whatever else. They ultimately realized, and I can tell you because we had thousands, literally thousands of funerals in that facility, it has inspired literally millions of people, emotionally and otherwise, because when you get in there, you sit down, and whether you've got the full complement of people in attendance or not, doesn't matter. It really, really works. He designed it. I think in Gothic style, it is called the ambulatory, but anyway, on the second level, running around, there is an area that you can walk. And if it really gets full, we can use, we put chairs in there more than the fire department says we should, but we do it anyway. And it also, just being there, and then you're closer to these, what Fay called the jewelry of the building, all the little points of attachment and whatever else. And they were done in a particular color that he happened to think was complementary to what, it's the only thing that has happened, which is a nod to modernity, if nothing else, is we have put a couple of big screens in the thing. And I mean, it's okay. It's kind of what you have to do these days to communicate. People that want to have, a film for their the story of their love, and they need this kind of thing. And I don't think it's damaged the building, but it's not probably something that
not in the initial spirit of things. The other point which you've mentioned is the scalability.
Right.
And I think that goes hand in hand with it's almost essential to the quality of the architecture, because an architect who begins working primarily at the residential scale develops an affinity for that very close-in construction and detailing and use of materials and alignment of screws, and a lot that can be achieved at that scale of the hand.
Good point.
Yeah.
The question is, as your practice grows in reputation and in commissions, the houses get bigger, and then, of course, the civic commissions or the institutional commissions become potentially quite challenging. Can you retain and attain that level of scalar beauty at the increased size and still be appealing to the not less to a family anymore, but to a much larger audience altogether? And this is, I think, often the test of an architect through and through.
Yes.
And if it doesn't, some architects would simply say, no, I know my scale and this is where I am.
Right.
And others will say, I want to test myself, or I have that ambition. I'd like to touch more people in a way. So for Fay Jones to take on a commission of this scale, Thorn Crown Chapel initially, then there's others, and be able to achieve what is achieved is saying something about the character of the work altogether,
Yeah,
meaning the
absolutely.
methodology
Yeah.
as well as the mindset. I know I can do this. I don't think that this project would have been accepted on ambition alone, because Fay Jones is not that person of such an ego
Right.
centered ambition. It was, here's something that I could do to the good of you and your colleagues and so on, but it's also something that I believe is achievable
Right.
on my own terms.
Well, I think if he had been a touch more ambitious and built at least one project outside the United States, he probably would have gotten the Pritzker Prize. But that was part of one of their criteria, and so many other people who, in my opinion, some not that worthy.
Yeah.
He didn't, but that's just because he did. I mean, I was told when we first were introduced to him that he really didn't want to do anything more than about 90 minutes from his house.
Oh no, I was going to mention this. I've said this myself, and it's been told to me that initially, the scope of the practice was I have to be able to drive there
Right.
and get back home for dinner time in the space of a day,
exactly.
and that was
Well,
really
if I was married to Gus, I'd want to get back there too. But anyway,
well. Of course, there's a beautiful home in Little Rock called Pine Knoll, which is very expansive, but really was the first project, as I've understood it, beyond that driving distance. Because at that time, you couldn't get to Little Rock in a day and back in a
Really?
day
Okay.
because of the way the highways were done at that point. So you have to go and spend the night and then come back.
Yeah.
But that was the first project, and there's a distance as well. Which can my work bridge the distance?
yeah, can I?
Who's managing it? Is it, and again, this is where the contractor is so important. Can I trust that person to bring into being everything that I'm hopeful for?
Well, again, I think at that point, and I don't know the whole history of his relationship with Maurice. I know it was extraordinarily close.
Yeah,
But I think by then, certainly he had developed all the confidence he needed to in NECA
right.
and Maurice, remember him, he's a big guy. He's pretty direct, and I think he's not gonna let anything slide. He's not gonna let anything slip. He's gonna speak his mind.
And that was the same with the residents in Washington DC that I was referring to,
Okay.
either that Maurice was going that direction and being the on-site representative.
Yeah.
But even there, as I've understood it, there was a team of builders, the people to do the mason, people to do
Right.
the framing, the people to do the details, that they were utterly devoted to that project.
Yeah.
Right. So you need, yes, perhaps at this point in the career, the partner who's willing to bridge the gap and with whom you have complete faith and trust. And then you've got these people on site who are doing the building. And of course, over time in Arkansas, Fay Jones's work was completely reliant upon the same people over and over and over again. Right? So at some point, you never really had to edge, but it's the same relationship, and which is why I'm very excited to see the steeper pitch of the roof altogether.
Well, and frankly, if you're interested, maybe this would be. I'm sorry, I probably came out a little rude when I said I've been with a whole bunch of development people recently. I get a little nervous, but I've got the original building plans for the building. Nobody wanted them, and when we sold the building, I kept them. I said, "Well, this is wrong."
Well, we probably have a destination for those.
We do, our special collections.
Yeah, and I think we should make that happen.
Especially
I
if
think
there
we
are any,
Assuming I can still find them.
especially if there are any original sketches.
Did you see my face when you said that? I was like, we'll take them.
Well, most people don't know me. I don't ever throw anything away. Somebody said, "Well, how do you do this?" I just get buy bigger houses.
Yeah,
It's
right.
easier.
More storage space.
I leave it to my children. My job is to curse my children.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me see if he's actually quiet with this.
I'll give you a business card.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
let me know, because we do have a place, a special place.
Well, I think they should be someplace.
The other issue comes to mind is beyond the, we'll call it scalability, is transferability, which is to say, have an architect who made their name by being utterly devoted to Arkansas. Maybe a little bit beyond regionally, so to speak, but more or less, people, as you've described, people said, do you know that architect in Arkansas, as if Arkansas is 5 people, you know, sitting around a table, but, and sometimes it might be, but,
Yeah.
but there's a very place-centered approach to the work as it gets presented out into the world, and it is utterly attuned to the geography, the climate, the local builders, and so on. So imagine being made the proposition, you might have a project in Los Angeles, you might have a project in Washington, D.C., or in Boston, as we know that projects exist. Is that possible? Can you transfer that sensibility that is in everyone's mind, so fixated on building in Arkansas? How does that transfer to Los Angeles? Different climate in many ways, right? Different sites. So it's not only about size and scale, it's just about displacement altogether. And that's, again, another way of testing the substance of an architectural practice or an architectural approach. Can it transfer? Doesn't. If it doesn't say it invalidates it. It's just another way of measuring it. And
Well, I think too, the fact that it does, of course, the same could be said in the foreground, but it does sit by itself. And it is not gonna ever be encroached by anything competitive at all, height-wise, appearance-wise, or otherwise. It's a small little, you'll see it, a small little Greek chapel that was built just down the hill and to the left. But it doesn't interfere at all. It speaks more to the ecumenical nature of what we do than anything else. But, so it's never gonna be, built up next to, around, or into, which is a big problem with Gary's project, Walt Disney Hall, where I go on a regular basis. But I can tell you some horror stories about that thing in the early going as well, because I knew the builder. But it's not, not everything is instant success. But Skyros has been, and that's what I was telling you that story. So we had this other little chapel, tiny little chapel called Rose Chapel, and the one didn't get built, or the Sky Chapel got built, Rose didn't. So I said, well, let's call it Sky Rose. You're nuts. I said, I may be nuts, but I am the CEO of the business. And you come up, with a better name, because the way we spell it, it's S-K-Y, and then butted up next to it is the Rose of the Capital. I said, it's 2 old chapels, one of them, and, oh, okay. Anyway, it works out, it sits up in kind of the clouds.
It's a perfect name. To your point about will we lose the magic if we make the scale up?
Yeah.
And when Maurice would come out, David McKee was with him.
Sure.
One of his lieutenants there, or partners.
Yeah.
And that they were very concerned about that. Will that happen, and will we run into problems in dealing with the seismic problems of LA? How are we going to maintain the beauty and the magic of the building and still be able to construct that and meet the inviolable seismic concerns of the LA builders? And that's where Pozo was wonderfully helpful in that we can make this work. We can do that. We can build it such that it will not damage and we'll maintain it.
But then we got this curve thrown at us. And I can tell you, it costs a bunch of money. It's close to $1 million change order. In fact, the other thing that was impressive about working with them, we only had 17 change orders in a complex building. And the only major one of any consequence had nothing to do with anybody's desire except the county of Los Angeles to cover their backsides and insist that we put this steel frame in there. And again, it got a cap, as you don't know, it's a steel frame building. So it was well managed throughout, but always maintaining this inspirational quality, which is I think the hall, I visited all of his chapels. I never visited any of his other type buildings.
Yeah.
I remember the one thing, and this is not relevant to this, other than it impressed me. I think one thing he had in the back of his mind too, he wanted to make sure that we were solvent. Because if you remember, he designed that housing complex with the pizza guy in Detroit.
Yeah.
And
After
then the
Monahan.
pizza guy got religion and decided, and just pulled the plug.
Mhm.
I've seen some of those plans for this massive.
Wonderful. Wonderful project.
But I think it disappointed Fay that it never got built. I would guess architects probably have, drawers and things that don't,
It makes you very hesitant to,
Well, yeah, you
Yeah.
wanna make sure that something like
right?
change their mind.
Right. I think this place-centered approach is what we often talk about with our students. We're not educating our students to be designing in the manner of Fay Jones or Maurice
No.
Jennings, for that matter. That's, in fact, that was precisely what Fay Jones, as an educator, was dead set against. He
Right.
wanted every student to have their own voice, find their own path, their own way of presenting the world through architecture. At the same time, there are principles to the work
Right.
that, again, coming back to scalability and transferability and so forth, whatever was the magic, what is the magic in Arkansas, has currency here in Los Angeles,
Sure.
which in some ways is what comes for free: light, right?
Yeah.
Orientation,
Yeah.
proportion, view, sensitivity to the particulars of a place such as the hilltop in East Los Angeles. And that is where I think would hopefully keeps people coming to the chapel and keeps them coming back, and then where they find consolation or solace.
And they do, by the thousands. And by the way, I don't know how long it's been since you've been up there, Buck.
Last week, it was my first time in a while.
All right, well, you probably noticed, maybe you didn't, those power lines got moved.
Yeah, I was staggered, yeah. I don't know how the hell you did that.
Well, that was it. One thing they hired me back to do. I did it for nothing, because I love to poke my finger in the eye of Southern California Edison. I've known their CEO since a long, long time back, and I knew what their weak points were. So I negotiated that deal for them.
I have a question for you, more so than commentary at this point, which is one that any institution or developer or hopefully client is going to ask is, what is, at some point you either knew you were not taking a risk, or if you were taking a risk, it was a calculated risk by investing, so to speak, in Fay Jones to come here, design here. And I wondered what brought you across, let's say, the finish line, so to speak, to say, this is going to be a good thing. This is a worthwhile investment.
Well, I think once you see in person, and Buck was right, I needed to go back there and spend some time in Eureka Springs and hear that whole story. I love that little town of Eureka Springs. It kind of reminded me of when I was in college. They hadn't changed. They were still hippies. But and then carrying the 2x4s by hand up, that side. I think what the total budget was $150,000 or something like that, whatever. And then I remember visiting, and here was the guy who had the land, and his widow was sitting there right in the door.
Reed.
That was collecting whatever it was, the charges, come in, and then she gave you the rules of being quiet. But it was, I had no doubt in my mind at all. This is what we wanted. We wanted to make. We wanted to do something special. This is just pardon the expression, big ass cemetery out on the east side of Los Angeles, which didn't have any celebrities. They all went to Forest Lawn for the most part. The closest we ever had to a celebrity was Richard Nixon. We had a very special place. And I finally went to, what's his name, Taylor, I guess, at the library, and I said,
John Taylor.
yeah, you do not know, bury him there. It wasn't the political had to do with the fact that when you have a big celebrity like that, what you get is a lot of traffic and nothing else. And it becomes a real management problem. And I said, where he should be is actually where he is. We actually did the burial for Pat first and the president later, but, so we don't have anybody like that. And I said, you know, I'd rather be known not for some evanescent personality that comes and goes, good or bad, or you find out after they're gone how bad they were. I'd rather have something upbeat and inspiration. Because I gotta tell you, the board is, oh my God, they're bankers and whatever. And a little known fact is, well, Bruce Bam, and I'll tell you, it's not terribly relevant, except that there was a whole complicated set of things, which I won't go into, but we actually had sold the business by the time the chapel was completed and dedicated. And so we got into some disputes with the new owner and also. At that point, the board said, well, we're not gonna build that walkway thing. And he designed this beautiful, I don't know what the term is. Yeah, it was covered arbor, in fact, right off to the side. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. It really adds to the context of the site. And so well, we something like that comes down. We are the publicity that you're going to get, you're going to get it because it's you're going to get it. Okay. And these were civic guys from downtown Illinois. But no, I never had any doubt about the quality of what we were going to get and the inspiration to the people who attended and then to people who just casually happened to see this thing. You know? Because we have developed now some of the property behind it, which is removed by several thousand feet, but it looks continuous from a distance because it's green. So Scarborough sits in the green environment of trees, redwoods, by the way. I think some of those have survived. And so it doesn't pop quite as much as it once did, but it's still, you can see it from the freeway. And so you know there's something special there. And that's what we want, something special. And that's what we got. And I figured, yeah, that's the old thing, but we build it, they'll come, right? And they do. And interestingly enough, a very high percentage of our current clients are Chinese. They love that place. It has nothing Chinese about it. But they recognize a great building, monument to their liking. So,
Bruce was giving you credit for something that I was fascinated with, is there are no vertical monument stones in those hills, except when you go to Europe and you see the cathedrals there, there's always where the priests are buried and then there is a section adjacent to Sky Road where they actually put in vertical monuments, and that it gives it a flavor that I was just captivated by.
very European.
I'm a big fan of Churchill and have been to his gravesite
Sure.
a number of times, and it's a tiny little chapel is where he's buried in a nondescript, modest tomb that's right next to him, and with all of his relatives, and the relatives of his wife and the whole works. And it gives you that feel, very much like when you're looking at Sky Rose, that chapel there.
Well, what we figured out, we had, as I said, the property is kind of two sections. There's a smaller piece, which was the original piece. And then they acquired this other piece, and just inventory, right, that we're gonna now fix up at some point more in the future. The guys that started this business were, I won't go into their history either, but suffice it to say, they were interested. But at least they had some vision out in the future about this thing, and that the cemetery kind of got started by accident. But regardless, the original part of the cemetery, if you happened to go there, I mean, not on this tour, but it is filled with all these upright monuments, but they did it in the old style, and by that I mean cheek by jowl and whatever, it was very difficult to maintain. But we figured out, I said, you know, there's a demand for this, people want those again.
Mhm.
Well, if you space them properly and so on, you can do just fine as far as maintenance goes. They're no more of a problem than anything else. What had happened back in the day, and the guy that founded Forest Lawn was really the guy that figured this out. He said, well, you put, you know, flat stones. People see this big, beautiful park thing, it doesn't look like a burial ground. And you can mow, you know, right over the top of it, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. But even, you know, they got back to having that right monuments as well. Because, so, yeah, you know, it's worked, and again, played right into the market that was coming our way, which we really weren't cognizant about. Until one day they have a day, it's, God, the name, anyway, it's a Chinese, two names, but it's, roughly translated, it's tomb sweeping, so they come out. And they're obligated within their culture to make sure, because we have endowed care cemeteries, so they are maintained on a regular basis mostly. But one day, on this particular day, they all showed up. We had no idea what to do. Honestly, God, we had no idea that people were going the wrong way, down the streets, they were driving. They were everywhere, like 60,000 cars in this. Well, we learned from that, and then now we have full security and directional signs and all this kind of stuff. But as devoted as they are to whatever may have been a tradition in the past, they love the idea of these upright monuments. They love the idea of this chapel and all kind of works. So, but it's one of those things, and you get lucky, but we're very proud of it.
Well, one other point too, that I think Dennis is minimized, is the addition of the organ. And that was a big concern.
It was.
Maurice, David, and Faye were all, that was a different dimension and a new game for them. And they really researched the hell out of that.
But you know the thing about,
And Quimby was a star.
oh, Mike he's this little builder, he's very well respected. Like we got a letter from some woman in, I think it was in Louisiana. And she knew about the chapel and all those kinds of stuff. If you don't, in the letter, you see this in her letter, if you don't hire this Mike Quimby guy, you're fools. I've been co-worst. But anyway, what I found out about pipe organs and so on, it was, and what a great, but the thing about pipe organs, fortunately, for the integrity of the architecture and so on, 90% of a pipe organ you don't see. It's all behind, you know, even that Disney Hall, where they've got a Manuel Rosales designed that organ, and it's 6,000 pipes. And anyway, so it's over. Ours is about 4,000, but it's a very big organ. That's all behind, so all this wonderful woodwork, so on. It's beautiful wooden boxes. So they figured out how to do it. We have some visible pipes you really have to have. And it's always the big ones, which are the low notes and all this kind of stuff. But Quimby was he's just a good old boy, and he recognized the qualities in Faye and Maurice. And so they worked together to get it done, and it worked.
Well, at the dedication, that was just an amazing experience.
Wasn't it?
Is to hear the sound of them when they're really showing out.
Yeah.
Well, I got to plan that. I'm a lawyer by background, but I worked actually with one of my daughters who was doing tech theater, studying tech theater, and my son, he was a gopher, and we put together this whole program and how it would unfold, and I had to educate the choir master at Whittier College, who was Stephen Gothel, about this one piece of music that I wanted him to do because I knew it has great dramatic content. And it's written by an Irish film composer. And it was written for the movie Henry VIII, which is a kind of drama movie, Henry V. And it talks about his the battle at
Agincourt.
yeah, and they were thought to be the underdogs, but I don't know what succeeded there. It's a fabulous piece, and it's called Non Nobis. Anyway, it's great for that pipe organ because when you hear the piece as recorded for the film, you know, it comes to a big thing at the end, and much of that is created by a pipe organ. So I got Stephen involved in doing this, and I kind of stuck it in. I drove him down the hill, and I put this, you know, those as you have a CD and thing in your car. That's all gone, but and I played it. He never heard it. He goes, wow, I can see how that might work. But it was fun to do that because it lends itself, the chapel lends itself to the drama if you want to do it.
Yeah.
And even when I was kind of the MC, and I remembered something that had been done elsewhere, and so we set it up so that there was a spot that would come down in this particular place at the front at the flower arranging end of the chapel of the altar. And so at this point in time, I could just kind of pop out and start talking to people. Well, again, it's all a matter of just a little bit of drama, a little bit of showmanship at that building. Lends itself. We've had several, I don't know about recently, because of the time involved, but we've had several films that have been done there, space-oriented kinds of things, because it's all the angles.
Yeah. Well, it could be said that Thorncrown Chapel, and you alluded to this, most probably designed for silence,
Yes.
for reflection, kind of
Yeah.
assist you in thinking about that, right?
She sure,
Although,
she sure as hell did.
although they have, you know, there's a piano there, so it
Yeah.
can be, it does have acoustic qualities. But when an architect knows from the beginning that there will be a pipe organ, then you're designing for another sensibility.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
And here too, the transferability of the general sacred space approach,
Right.
which is something that becomes part of, I think, of Fay Jones architecture's DNA, has this quality to it. But can it be equally a sacred space for performance, for music, as much as it can be for silence or reflection and meditation? And that's another test of, and which it passes, as you would say.
Well, you think again about, I'd hoped that there would be a lot more weddings. I mean, a wedding is a great ceremony.
Yeah.
And we started trying to have a series of jazz concerts during
That's a good idea.
the,
That's good.
yeah, but the problem is that the cemetery was not the idea of it being used at night.
Yeah.
Most cemeteries aren't.
Yeah.
And so we tried, but we tried to use like little luminaires along the road and
Yeah,
whatever else to
yeah.
guide people. It became a bit of a nightmare to do. It was interesting for people and popular, but it would take. The other thing that was never built, unfortunately, one of these days, if my hydrogen project takes off, which I think it's about to, by the way, Buck. I'd commissioned that thing to be built. It was this gorgeous Carillon Tower. It was right
Oh,
next to it.
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and he designed
Okay.
it.
Well, that's something to see. I've
Yeah,
never
yeah.
seen that,
Fay
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Fay and Maurice, it was perhaps more Maurice. I'm not sure, but it was very complimentary of the architecture. It was going to be gorgeous, and we had acquired through some other means and reasons some tuned Carillon bells.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And they were really quite special. They were chromatically tuned. There were 32 of them, these bells. Finally, we ended up giving them, of all places, to the LA Philharmonic. They have them, and I'm not sure where they put them or if they ever did anything with them. because it then became a storage issue. What do you
Right.
do? Blah, blah, blah.
Right, right.
But that was going to be part of it, and they were going to be able to play the carillon from inside the chapel using an electronic keyboard rather than the traditional push the pedal thing.
Right.
So that didn't get done, but the space.
The only
is
one
still
I
there.
know of, Carillon, is in Hot Springs at Garvin Woodland Gardens, where Maurice has designed a chapel
Okay.
for the Anthony family, and then there's a Carillon standing next to that.
Yeah.
That's the only
Well,
one I
see,
know of, so,
that's where he
yeah,
did his original design work was on ours.
right, yeah.
The other chapel, though, I got to say, which is now a full-on religious site. It may or may not have been when what's his name was running it, but is the Crystal Cathedral, and that was a Philip Johnson, the Carillon Tower,
Yeah.
and that thing is spectacular. That whole building, but that Carillon is really special because of the glass and all that. It's right around,
Interesting
Dennis,
period.
you'll get a kick out of this. When I was back making a presentation to the dean and to Mary and their staff on the, trying to find a home for this furniture, and I played that tape that you put together. And in the course of the tape, Pavarotti comes in after your speech, the whole works. And the good dean here is tapping his foot in the whole works and shares the fact.
Say that now.
I'm Gina.
Buck Johns.
Very nice to meet you.
How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good.
What do you think about Rose Hills?
We've been involved with it for a long time.
Right.
If you've seen the video that Dennis did, yeah. Yeah, we were part of putting it together. We had a meeting with Dennis this morning
Okay.
for him to give us the history of it. The college has changed the name of the architectural school at Arkansas to the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design.
Very nice.
And this is his biggest project.
Right.
Okay.
Love that.
He was known for chapels, but none this big.
I remember you showing me the picture of the mini Sky Road. Obviously, that was built first out in the woods somewhere, right?
That was Thorn Crown.
Thorn Crown.
Yeah, right,
Thorn
right.
Crown, yes.
And it is kind of that as a mini.
It is.
I have a great memory of when I went to visit Faye and Maurice. I went to Thorn Crown by myself. And and it's out in the woods, and I sat in the back pew all by myself and just soaked it in, and felt it. Yeah, that was a good thing.
It was incredible.
Well, I started the story outside. Jeff is our CEO, and
Congratulations.
Gina's in charge of him.
Yeah, my work wife.
That's great.
Well, we started a little bit of the story about having the need for a funeral chapel, and because we were a nonprofit at that time, we had cash too. We had money to spend, so we decided to figure out what kind of chapel we wanted to build, and we had a couple of false starts. We had a study that showed how you could use a chapel to cover the water tank up on top of the hill. We looked at that. Across the street was the grave dirt disposal area. And we decided we could build a cathedral here. We actually hung balloons up like 300 feet in the air and had a big party with the trustees, and they didn't like it that much. And so Dennis and I just kind of forgot for a while, and every once in a while it'd be kind of rise up in our thinking. So I was home. I started that story about home watching, reading Smithsonian Magazine and having that article about Fay Jones and how I gave it to Dennis, and Dennis said, let's go see him. And that's how it started. And his partners, Ken and Sandy, they went back and met him, and Buck factored in there. I told you that story about how he really made the deal for us because, Fay didn't want to build a chapel in a cemetery. And Buck made the point to him, more people are going to see your work here, Fay, than anywhere else in the world, probably. And it's true. Yeah. So we got on board, and then the next piece of it is, well, what are we going to build? And we started that conversation, and we were smart enough to bring our team. So it wasn't me and Dennis and Buck and Fay and Maurice, but no, it was our work team came up. They were part of a committee, and their names are out on the trellis outside. You'll see those names.
I love that plan.
Yeah. So, what do you do for a living? Well, I do this. I run the flower shop. Well, what about flowers? How do they get here? Where do we put them when they get? That kind of thing we worked on. So the building is not just beautiful, but it's functional as well. It's functional. So this is the other open all day long. You know, so you could be a Wayfarer's Chapel. You could just come and walk in. You're feeling low. You could sit in the pew. You could, you know, reflect.
Which was given by John Ed.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Who just gave us $2 million.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yes.
I love hearing Dennis talk about seismic load and they gotta have a steel frame built.
These days, you wouldn't have to, right? You could do it all in engineered
Not
wood.
well.
Yep.
Just have to be sized accordingly, calculated accordingly.
Okay. And Gus passed away a few years back, or?
She did, and then their eldest
Handicap.
daughter,
Ramp.
who really wants little to do with
Changed
it, lives in St.
To an altar to a
Okay. That's near my hometown.
So if you are in a wheelchair,
Yeah.
where do you?
Got a great legacy here.
just the views.
This is very subtly turned, right? It's not this way. It's very subtly turned.
Well, I told
Rare, more rare.
I told the group the other day, I said, if we can't see the air, we don't trust it. So,
I don't have much time, Bruce, so I'd love to get a picture with everybody.
sure. We'll tell the photographer. He's working for Buck, basically, I think.
I'd like to get a quick one and send it over to
So when
Sure.
they have
Jay Waring.
an actual funeral with a casket, they'll
He'll take it on your
Right
phone
into
if that's
this
what you want to do,
surface?
or he can take
Put it
it.
down
He can
below.
take it and send it
my
to you.
right.
Oh,
She's my
you're right. Yeah, I forgot you have a photographer. I got to tie my shoe real quick.
Right,
And you can see, on clear days, you can see the ocean is right out here.
right.
So it's just a beautiful spot. Look at the size of the glass here.
I wonder where this was actually made, because there are moments in the U.S. where there wasn't a U.S. manufacturer for plate glass this size. You had to go to Germany or else.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Is that back, is that overlooking LA, right?
Yeah.
So that's LA out there.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, the axis of the chapel is almost due west. It's at the 270.
Azimuth, if you will. So I think it's awfully close to that. And that was intentional, too. And we let Faye and Maurice pick the site. They chose this site. I gave them 5 locations in the park, and they chose this one.
Some days you can.
Griffin Observatory,
Yeah.
the whole spiel.
Yeah. This is just a beautiful location.
Should be better.
Self-traveling country interviewing pipe. I didn't know there was a pipe organ, cult.
We ended up in St. Louis, actually, and we met a guy, Quimby Pipe Organs, his business is in Missouri, and he had lost his family in a tragic car wreck, and he poured all of his energy and his grief back into his business, and he convinced Dennis and I he was the right guy to build it, told us what he was going to do. So this Michael Quimby Pipe Organs, that's what this is, and what you see are display pipes. They work, but there's like 2,000 pipes there in the cabinetry and all. Plus a machine that does this, it blows air into it. Yeah. So,
Great.
yeah.
Oh, I see the little holes.
It's a five rank organ, so I don't even know what that means exactly.
I don't either. All right, we're gonna get out of here.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, good.
Good stuff.
Oh, where are you trained?
Yep, you're gonna catch the train, we're going to San Diego.
Well, I can give her a ride there.
Oh, you're going to San Clemente on the way. That's good stuff, Buck.
You going up to
Okay.
Union Station? You can catch it. You can
Okay.
catch it in Fullerton too.
Pleasure. Unfortunately, I have to go to the train.
Okay. I know
Nice
the train-
meeting you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to